One, I'm just a typical average American here today to learn how to speak like a Canadian. You know,
Okay, just gonna get a little meta on you guys here. I'm just a typical average Canadian, here to react to American Learns How to Speak Like a Canadian video here by Tyler. I just figured I would jump into the fray and clear a little bit of this up for you just from another person's perspective and react to your reactions.
and possibly a little about the Canadian accent. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that Americans and Canadians are far more similar than I ever imagined, while also having the absolute most random, strangest differences.
Okay, yeah, you're right. There are definitely a lot of similarities, a few differences, but there's definitely a lot of like culturally we consume a lot of like American TV, so we definitely have we and so we definitely pick up a lot from that.
Between the two of us, which is beautiful, of course. Fascinating, interesting, and beautiful differences between our cultures. And there's a lot of stereotypes in the United States about how Canadians speak. And the more I have learned about Canada and some of the, phrases, accent, if you will, and words and slang, the more I realize that a little bit of that is overblown.
Yeah,
How
there you go.
Americans
You're
think
getting it.
Canadians speak. As a matter of fact, in a
Boom.
lot of American cartoons and comedy, there's a whole Canadian accent that I don't think really exists at this point. And how you say,
Yes, there definitely is a Canadian accent a bit, more prevalent in like the East Coast and, in Quebec, where their culture has been around there for a longer time. In the prairies, it's more of like a bit of a multiculturalism thing where it all kind of gets smoothed out by us all seeing the same, like, TV and radio and all that kind of stuff. Um, and in fact, in Canada, well, where I'm at in Winnipeg, Manitoba, they do a lot of call centers. They have a lot of call centers here just because our accents are, it's hard to kind of place. It doesn't sound foreign, but it's very difficult to place. So we actually do, there's a whole bunch of them here, and essentially it's just vague enough, and it's not too odd, and it works for lots of people, I guess. So
a boot is not as exaggerated as I thought. That's
no,
only very
that's just on the
specific
TV.
parts of
I don't
Canada
think anybody
and
says
other
a
stuff
boot.
like that, like saying a
It's a
and all
boat.
sorts of things. But
Lots of
I
A.
was still very, very drawn to this video. This seemed very fun and interesting because I feel like there's a lot of things I probably say as an American that I don't realize is really American and a little strange to other people outside the U.S. And the exact same exists for Canada. I hate to break it to you, but there's a lot of weird stuff being said there. So, so I'm really interested to see what that is. So let's take a look. If the video will let me. I think if I refresh, then we can have our little how to speak
Hi
like a
everyone,
Canadian.
it's me. This week I wanted to talk to you guys about some Canadian slang and phrases.
Okay.
We've already talked about British slang. There's tons. We could do a ton of videos on British slang, but
Yeah, there's way more
80% of my
subsets of British
viewers
slang in
are British.
different areas, and
I
it's
mean,
been there
you're
longer,
already
right?
familiar
Like,
with British
there's
slang,
way
so I
more,
thought it might be interesting to share some
different
Canadian
cultures
slang with you.
within the UK
Yeah.
for sure.
Actually,
Well, I'm not British, but
Subcultures,
I
I
am
guess.
American. I'm just as equally interested and amused by some good Canadian slang. Let's hear it.
really difficult. Canadian slang with you instead. Now this was actually really difficult because I'm Canadian living in England. When I hear English or British slang, I get in trouble for saying either. I'm sorry. When I hear slang living in England, it automatically stands out to me because it is foreign. It's not something that I'm used to. It's not slang that we say back in Canada. It really sticks out. But when I was trying to come up with Canadian
Watch some panel
slang,
shows. Those British
I
panel
realized it
shows
was
are
really
awesome.
difficult to pick out what is considered slang
Yes, I understand exactly what she's saying. It would almost have been much easier to have someone who is British go to Canada or an American go to Canada, just mingle a little bit, go around, wander around and listen. And then I would easily be able to just listen to people talk in Canada and be like, that's an interesting choice of words there. Or
Okay, I would say so if you're not trying to like set somebody up so that they have to go and pick a list of words, I would suggest maybe checking out a couple shows. And what I was thinking is if you look at, Trailer Park Boys and Letterkenny, I mean, they're a little, they've kind of tweaked it. They're kind of living it up a little bit, but there's also a bit of like self-fulfilling prophecy and that stuff, right? Like, so, Canadians consume that. They watch these shows and it gets picked up and it kind of like, spreads out across everybody. But if you, they're both a little over the top, but they're both, if you want to see some Canadianisms, that's where you'd go to check that out.
be like, hey, that's slang, and write it down in my little secret slang notebook. But I'm guessing she was able to come up with some good stuff.
Does that make sense? I ended up asking some people. I did some research. I've come up with a list here that I'm going to go through, and hopefully we can learn some new Canadian slang. So without further ado, let's go. Now,
Okay.
the very obvious one that comes to mind is A.
Yeah.
We throw
Yeah.
it onto end of pretty much any sentence.
You got this one, Tyler. You
Yes,
figured this one
I've
out.
become a little more familiar with A.
You got it.
I don't think Canadians use it as much as I think. Maybe they do. This is all just what I think. And it's basically to turn a sentence into a question,
Yeah.
I think.
It doesn't really matter. It tends to be sort of a rhetorical question. You might say it to make sure someone's heard what you said. But
Okay.
really, we like to sort of dot it in no matter what.
Yeah, it's like a spice or a flavoring packet or some salt. Seasoning. Verbal seasoning. You sprinkle
Verbal
it
seasoning,
in,
that
and
is-
it's lovely.
Just a
People
second.
said that in it,
Verbal seasoning, you got to trademark that. Verbal seasoning is an awesome way to describe that or describe it in general.
bruv is similar to A in terms of it's sort of a rhetorical thing. You add it to the end of the sentence. But I have to greatly disagree. From everybody's comments, it seems that in it, bruv, is a very low-end slang. It's kind of cringy, like, oh, I would never say that. It's sort of looked down upon, whereas A, everybody says
I couldn't
it.
tell you.
Your grandma...
I haven't been.
Okay.
I'm
we're
sure it's
getting
a lovely
unique
place.
perspective here because she
I'd
said
love to,
she's
though.
living in England as a Canadian, so she's actually relating some English and British slang in Nibruv to Canadian slang of A, but apparently they're not that similar. I think A is far more commonly used.
Mhm.
mother says it, your kids say it, your teacher says it, our prime minister says it, everybody says A. It's widely accepted. It's just part of our language. It's not looked down upon. It's just who we are.
That is so interesting. I would have maybe been convinced at first that the use of A was an American fabrication, a stereotype, not real. But it is kind of real. It is real. I'm going to go ahead and say it. It is full real, used in Canada, and I love it.
Yep.
In Canada, you probably wouldn't say mate. That's not really a thing. However, I have heard people say dude, which is more of a younger thing. I used to say dude a lot. But that is like a 20s and under sort of phrase.
Huh. That's certainly a thing
Buddy.
in the United States. Yeah, it probably is a younger thing. In the United States, that used to be associated with surfing culture. California surfer dude with long hair, long blonde hair, surfing. the
Snowboarding
waves,
Canada?
say, dude, what's up, dude? And that they don't say
Much like the surfing culture in the States, there is a huge snowboarding culture in Canada. Definitely in the Rockies. There's a bit down there in like Blue Mountain and stuff like that in Ontario, and definitely out in Mont Tremblant in Quebec. But yeah, there's definitely a culture that peels from that. And of course, there's like other people that like go in seasonally to Canada and we'll be bringing that in from surfing, but they do want to ride or go snowboarding in the winter.
Now, but the word dude is fairly common in young kids in the United States. I've caught
Ninja
myself
Turtles.
saying it now and again when I get carried away.
But you might also hear people say bud or buddy. So
Yeah,
something like, hey
Bud
there,
or
bud.
buddy is
Hey there,
definitely
bud. You kind of have to
is
say it with that, like, an accent.
definitely
Hey there,
commonly
bud.
used.
I feel like I've heard this.
South Park.
I feel
South
like
Park
I've
did it.
actually heard this used in reference to how Canadians talk using the word bud.
hmm
Gosh, I don't know if it was like a
My
Family Guy
jaw's
thing
supposed to
or
like split right
some
here.
other show or
Snap
whatever.
back. Buddy,
But,
I'm not your buddy, pal.
Bud. Yeah,
Not your
I
pal,
have heard
friend?
that in association with Canadians. Huh?
Do you hear that? Or is that just me? So a sentence could be, hey there, bud, it's pretty cold out there, eh? And yes,
That
it
is
cold out there.
definitely, someone's
It's
definitely said
always
that
cold.
sentence before
It's
around here.
Canada. Bundle up. Now, a really famous cafe, I guess you'd call it, in Canada would be Tim Hortons. But nobody really...
Tim. Oh, sorry. Didn't get a little carried away there, but every time there's a Tim Hortons reference in
This
one
is
of
gonna be a
these
long video. Yeah.
videos on Canada,
Tim Hortons is
I
definitely a
just gotta
thing.
acknowledge it. It gets me a little worked up in a good way.
Tim Hortons was a bigger thing in Southern Ontario, and it kind of came out more dramatic in the late 80s, early 90s. It started coming out west and everything, but it started in Southern Ontario and snowballed from there.
Now, Tim, it's like this magical place that I've never seen, this magical utopia of Tim Hortons that I hear about.
It's not
Whispers
magical.
of this secret place.
I think it's owned by the same people that own Burger King now, and those people live in South America. They're South Americans or something. I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely, you can get, most people would, if it was up to them, they would definitely want a small, like, boutique kind of coffee place, mom and pop shop instead. And their donuts or whatever are going to be like, freshly baked and stuff like that, and done. Tim Hortons donuts are actually, I think a lot of them come in like frozen, and they just kind of like throw them in the oven there at the store or something. I could be wrong, but I'm there's definitely steps that have been made to like bring the quality down a little bit. So I don't know. It's not magical. But it's definitely, I guess coffee can be magical on its own, even from like, instant coffee if you're in a fridge. So yeah, maybe I retract my previous statement. Yeah, coffee's magical.
And here it is again.
really calls it Tim Hortons, we call it Timmy's. Timmy's are...
Or Tim's.
Timmy's. Okay, good to
Tim's.
know. If I'm going to assimilate into the Canadian culture and be mistaken for a true Canadian, I got to know that kind of slang. Heading to Timmy's, eh?
are everywhere. I come from a fairly small town, I guess you'd call it. I would tend to call it a village, but it's not as small as like an English village. It's like a Canadian-sized village. Anyways, it's not very big, and we had 2 Timmy's. And I swear, if you stood in the parking lot of one, you can almost see the other one. Like, they're that close.
It sounds like
It's
Godrich,
ridiculous.
Okay.
But we love
Ontario.
at Timmy's, you can get things like coffees, hot chocolates. There are ice caps, iced cappuccinos. It's like...
Oh, I was going to say ice caps. Do people in the U.S. say ice caps? Is this just a her thing?
I definitely
Or is this a
heard
thing?
about ice caps.
Anyway.
and slushy are incredible. If you watched my Canadian vlog, I went to Timmy's and I
Ooh.
got a ice
Oh, look, they have little special Tim Hortons butter. That's kind of fun.
cap and a sesame seed bagel, which their bagels are lovely. Just
Whoa. The way she said bagel.
Bagel. No, she just
Bagel.
mispronounced it. There's nothing different
Bagel.
about the way you
Bagel?
pronounce bagel.
That's not even
I'm gonna
on
skip this.
her.
they're going to Timmy's to get a double-double. So a double-double is
double-double.
a coffee with 2 creams and 2 sugars.
Yeah.
Oh.
2 creams, 2 sugars, double
I feel
double.
like I've heard double in reference to coffee. Like maybe that's a coffee thing. Not a Canadian thing, but double? Almost sounds like a type of hamburger or something.
Or is it 2 milks and 2 sugars? Anyways, you get a double-double from Timmy's. But if you are going, get yourself an ice cap. They're wonderful.
Ooh.
Get yourself some Timbits.
Okay, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. Good recommendations for Timmy's.
Have a bagel and just...
When are you coming,
Now, we
Tyler?
also have a fair...
Well, if I went to the counter and was like, can I have a sesame bagel? And they were like, what are you saying, eh? And I had to be like, a bagel. Can I have a bagel?
No,
And they went,
they would just
"Oh,
nod and give
bagel,
you
okay."
give you
amount
those
slang
things. But
around alcohol. So a Mickey is like a smaller one. I think it's like 13 ounces.
pocket
Wait, you can
size.
get alcohol at Tim Hortons?
So a Mickey is a fair amount of slang around
Here, I think I got him.
Oh,
Mickey's worth of bees here.
okay, I knew I missed something. We're not talking about Tim Hortons anymore. We're just talking about alcohol. I was
It's like a Mickey's
what,
worth.
what is this? You're getting this at Tim Hortons?
Chill. Now we also have a fair amount of slang around alcohol.
Okay.
So a Mickey is like a smaller one. I think it's like 13 ounces would be a Mickey. Or a 2-4 is a case of 24 beers.
Okay. A Mickey.
That's definitely more of an Ontario thing, Southern Ontario thing, a 2-4.
Never heard that.
And what's interesting, in Ontario, I don't know if it's in the other provinces, but we have a beer store called The Beer Store. That's the name of the store.
That's actually
In Manitoba, we've got the Liquor Commission, so it's actually like regulated. It's a Crown Corp that sets the price of all liquor. They don't do that in Alberta. They do have the LCBO in Ontario, and I'm not 100% sure on all the other provinces. But Alberta's definitely, you can get it anywhere.
actually like that. I think I know for a fact if there was a store in the United States, a chain called The Beer Store, I think that would do really well. Americans love funny little stuff like that. Oh, the name of the beer store is The Beer Store. I think that would do very well just on the name alone.
It's The Beer Store. So a phrase you might say, hey bud, I'm going to head up to the beer store and get a 2-4. Other slang you might hear. So in Canada, we have a $1 coin and a $2 coin, just like in the UK.
Right.
We call them loonies and toonies.
I have heard this at some point along the line. I reacted to Canadian money a while back. Looney and Toonie, 1 and 2, right?
Loonies are just a gold, like a flattened pound coin, basically. They're thin, and they are called loonies quite simply because there is a loon on the front. In Canada...
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know that. Is the Toonie for 2, though, for the number 2? Americans don't use coins for $1 or $2 coins. Americans don't use physical cash much at all.
I'd also point out that Canadians drop the a penny. So, I mean, if you're using a debit, you're paying Visa, then you can, it rounds right to the proper cent. But if you're dealing with cash, they just round it up or down to the nearest nickel. No one wants to carry around a bunch of pennies in their wallet.
It's bills. Never, we have a dollar coin, but nobody ever, no weirdo ever pulls that out. That'd just be a little strange.
We like our loons. They're birds, if you're not familiar. Do they have...
They're birds that waterfowl birds that really low. They've got a crazy voice. So if you're at the cottage, you're at the lake, then you can hear them, and they just sound at like the off hours, and they just sound like they've got big calls. You can check that out. They're actually pretty cool.
They must have loons in the UK.
They swim underwater.
So we have loonies that have...
I am vaguely aware of what a loon is. I couldn't picture it, but I knew it was a bird, but barely.
the loon on them. We call toonies, quite frankly, because they're worth $2,
Okay.
and we couldn't come up with a better name.
I
Now,
always thought we
lately,
could have
I've been
gone with
listening to
berries.
Canadian podcasts,
We got bears on them.
which
Could call them
has
berries.
really helped with this research because I
Yeah,
realized
toonies makes sense too, though.
that we Canadians tend to say, quite a lot. It's not something I ever noticed
For
before,
sure.
but,
Huh.
I talked to my boyfriend. He confirms that I say it a lot.
You know, I wouldn't say that that's common for a lot of Americans, but it wouldn't be unheard of for someone to say, you know. Certainly no one says it a lot. So that is funny that she's kind of identified that that's verbally something that Canadians do, like more than they think.
And this podcast, my God, there were so many people on it that would say, Again, it's kind of like a rhetorical. So a phrase might be, it's pretty cold out there, you better.
Yeah, it's like totally something you'd say and you're not really asking a question. You're not really saying, do you know? You know what I mean? It's just something you tack on, you sprinkle onto your sentence for no real reason, just because it's fun.
Better bundle up. And some people, I don't know, the accent is kind of like.
I have heard that, I think. That's from a Canadian somewhere at some point. I think I have heard it with
You
that
know?
inflection,
Oh, I don't know. Now, as a kid, we had a particular Canadian way of swearing. So if you didn't want to say hell because it's a bad word,
Yeah,
you would
H-E double
say
hockey sticks.
H-E.
Or are the cottages really cheap? Or
Oh,
what's
okay.
going on here? Kid thing. Wow.
Back
Okay,
to
cottages.
A lot of people tend to have cottages up north.
Yeah, okay. So she's taken this from a Southern Ontario perspective. I've lived in 4 provinces. So how they definitely have them in Quebec. I've been to a couple or at least one Quebec cottage. In Southern Ontario, they've got like in the Muskoka area and along the Bruce Peninsula, and there's definitely lakes in there too. But Muskoka country is definitely huge. But when you start getting into northwestern Ontario, there's a huge section like right up north of the Great Lakes, and then when you start going west, and they call their cottages camps. So they'll say it's their camp. Camp they'll have their house or whatever. It's like a Thunder Bay or a Wawa or whatever, but they'll have a camp, and that's like out there. Also, that's where you start getting into like res country, like reservations, but you call them reses. There's definitely a lot of them out there, and essentially it's so those sections of land where native peoples have been set aside land at some point with different treaties and stuff, and so they have various rights and claims to those pieces of property and various forms of self-government. They're definitely there.
Not just for millionaires, like regular people have cottages.
Yeah, lots of.
Yeah, see how this works is since there's so much land and there's so much space, so there's nobody there. There's lots of areas that have lots of lakes in it. And Manitoba is not like a land of 100,000 lakes. Like there's 100,000 lakes just in Manitoba, and if you think that there's 1.2 or 3 million people in the whole province, it's not hard to imagine, because some of these lakes are enormous, right? Like Lake of the Woods, like Lake Winnipeg, like Manitoba, you can see those things from space, no problem. And it's just a great way to get out of town. Like usually they're about 3 hours, on the far end from where people live. You want to be able to go there on the weekends and stuff, right? So in different areas of the country, you can have cottages or camps or go to the lake, like in Manitoba, there's the Whiteshell area. There's lots up on Lake Winnipeg as well too, and on Saskatchewan as well. Tons of beautiful lakes out there. And then as you start getting into Alberta, there's less lakes, and so what a lot of people like doing out there is if you're from Calgary or the area, you go wheeling, right? Or you spend time in the mountains, you go and enjoy. You can go to those alpine lakes, but they're small and you got to work really hard to get up to them, right? So, and then out in BC, the whole place is just magical. So you don't have to, I don't know if you have cottages as well too, but because you just need to go out your back door pretty much.
Ian's rich, or are the cottages really cheap?
Real estate is a
What's
big
going
deal
on
in
here?
Canada right
Yeah,
now.
If you owned a second
It's
place,
not cheap.
any real estate, a cottage, whatever it technically comprises a
They're
cottage.
great though.
I don't
I love going to the
is that like a
cottage.
cabin? Is it small?
invite
That's
myself
like,
over to my
me,
friends'
like,
places
you're
and
doing
couch
good.
surf.
You're doing good in
It's-
life. If you
You
got
can
your
get out there,
home
everyone's out for a
and
good
your
time.
family and job, and then you got your little cottage getaway. That's special. That's a
In the winter, a lot of cottages too will have like winter roads. So like instead of having to, being able to, have to take your boat out to get to the cottage, they'll have winter roads, and you're actually going to drive over those winter roads. Actually, I've got footage. Hey, I'm going to put some footage in right now. So essentially, you can see. So there's a lake, there's a cottage, and we've got the footage of people ice fishing and being out on the lake. And I guess even in this clip too, I can show, it's right next to a reservation, Shoal Lake 40, where Winnipeg gets all its water.
It's exceptional in the United States. Most people don't have that.
So you might be saying you're gonna go up to cottage country. That just means
cottage
where
country.
lots of cottages are. A big one is Muskoka, if you've ever heard of that. Lots of cottages. So just picture, like
It's a
small
big one
house
because it's
or, like,
close
a
to Toronto, right? It's
cabin
in
on a
southern
lake.
Ontario.
You go tubing and swimming and
Yeah, I mean, it sounds great. Sounds amazing. It's just not something people do much or have the opportunity to do in the U.S.
fishing, and you drink a lot. You bring up a bunch of cases of beer from the beer store. Cottages, honestly, cottages are so lovely. Another
Yeah.
common slang, in May, we have a long...
Hold on. I gotta see. Canadian.
Okay, I'm going to
Cottage.
insert some footage of
I wanna see
cottages
it.
here. These are what cottages look like, Tyler. This is what
Okay,
they look like.
I feel like this is gonna show me the most.
Here we go. Here's some awesome footage of cottages from above. This is what people go and head out to the lake to do, man. They go out and spend some time out hanging out at the cottage.
Beautiful assortment of cottages. This cannot be standard. This is just like outrageously nice.
It's
fun
not
little
outrageous.
cottages. Is this
They
normal?
can be, they can be outrageous. Check out Lake of the Woods, man. If you Google
These are
Lake of the Woods
beautiful. Is it just
cottages,
Google?
they are,
Choosing
Sylvan
beautiful
Lake in
cottages.
Ontario, or
Okay,
in,
I'm jealous. You got me.
Alberta, there are some crazy
weekend,
cottages
so
out
people
there
call
for
it
sure.
May 2-4. Common slang, in May, we have a long weekend, so people call it May 2-4.
Only in Ontario. Everywhere else, they call it May Long.
Oh.
So a typical phrase, you might say, I'm going up to the cottage for May 2-4. Now, this other one I noticed, I say for sure a lot. Now, at first I didn't notice it. Then my boyfriend started to make fun of me for it.
I'm going to
Then I
skip this
thought,
one.
I know what it sounds like. So a phrase could be, it's cold out there, that's for sure. You better bundle up, eh? We talk about the cold a lot. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
People
I
talk
actually
about
noticed
the
my
weather
boyfriend started to
because it's a
say it.
pretty safe topic.
So naturally,
That's why people talk
he's gonna
about the
get
weather.
teased till the
You
day
can't
dies
piss somebody
for
off
saying it that way.
if you're
Another one
talking
might
about
be,
something that everybody
"He's
can
definitely
see
pumped
right
up,
outside the
sure.
window,
I
and it
can't
affects
wait
them
for
on
my
a daily
holiday, that's for
basis.
sure. It's raining out there, that's for sure.
It definitely somehow fits into the Canadian trope of excited about what you're about to do. You're very excited. Going to the beer store, that's for sure. Like, okay, you're sure about it.
Yeah, people drink. There's lots of beer drinkers. I would also add to the lexicon Molson Muscle. Now, Molson is like one of the big Canadian or formerly Canadian beer manufacturers. And Molson Muscle is not referring to your guns as much as your arms, right? Or your guns. It's referring to your gut. So if you have a big Molson Muscle, that's just like a good way of saying I'm fat because I drink a lot.
Here, bud, I'm gonna head over to Timmy's. You want your double-double? Let me count up my loonies and toonies.
Sometimes I think you could also get your Molson Muscle from too many double-doubles.
From the beer store. We're gonna head up to Cottage Country for May 2-4. Hope it's not too cold up there, eh? It's gonna be a great weekend, that's for sure.
Okay, so that was basically the most Canadian statement ever? I bet, has any Canadian ever said those exact words in that order?
Yeah,
Or
probably.
That would just like summon...
Probably. I'll reiterate, man.
Hope it's not too cold up there, eh? It's gonna be a great weekend, that's for sure.
Okay, so that was basically the most Canadian statement ever? I bet, has any Canadian ever said those exact words in that order ever? That would just like summon the Canadian God or something onto Earth if someone were to say that many Canadian things in a row. Goodness.
That's most of them, isn't it? Also, what I love, I think, oh god, I should have researched. I think in Saskatchewan,
Bunny hugs.
a jumper, or what I would call a hoodie, so like you put it on and it's got the hood.
Oh, jumper. Is a jumper a hoodie? I've heard the word jumper. I don't remember. Is a
Yeah,
jumper a
we'd
hoodie
say
in
hoodie.
Canada?
Hoodie
That's
everywhere
what's
except
called
Saskatchewan.
A bunny hug.
A bunny hug.
I've never,
Bunny hug. I
I've
forgot
rarely
about
heard
the
it
bunny
actually
hug.
referred to as a bunny hug.
It almost
Don't
really
spend a lot of time in
sounds made up.
Saskatchewan.
That sounds like a made-up thing. Like, I don't believe that there's a bunch of Canadians running around talking about bunny hugs and wearing
No.
bunny hugs. It's
They're not.
very
There's not.
silly 2 words, but you know, that's okay. Like, it's fun too, though.
How cute. Learning how to spell Saskatchewan as a kid was like the bane of my existence. We said that in Ontario, but we don't.
Oh,
Obviously,
okay.
Canada
Okay, so only certain parts of Canada, bunny hug.
is a huge
Yeah.
country. So while we do speak a similar English across the board, a similar accent across the board, we do have bits and pieces that we don't say in other places. So those are the
Right.
first ones that came to mind.
There's also the fact that a lot of Canadians are first generation Canadians. So, they're just even struggling to get the language down pat too, So, yeah, ultimately though, like a lot of the stuff is just because we consume like American TV, standard American TV, like we pick that up. It's also why there's the CRTC, essentially that's where there's a mandated amount of Canadian content that needs to be put on the television, which helps Canadian TV producers and actually make stuff like Trailer Park Boys or like, Letterkenny or, like Corner Gas and stuff like that. And they get grants. And then they're able to also ensure that they'll have, be able to get airtime on networks, and then once they get syndicated, then it can go out, to the rest of the world, right? Once it hits like 100 episodes or whatever that is.
I hope you guys have learned something new, and maybe you could sprinkle in a couple and for sures and
And for sure.
expand your vocabulary. As always,
maybe.
thank you guys so much.
I would also add, I can't believe this didn't get mentioned, but Hoser, maybe that's just more of an older Canadian thing, but if you go look at Bob and Doug McKenzie's Strange Brew, with Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, classic, Canadian classic, there you could get some serious Canadianisms, but they say hoser all the time. And that's like essentially calling somebody a rube, you're like a country bumpkin if you're a hoser, right? Like it's not an affectionate title unless you're kind of joking with your buddies. I'd also add the term clicks, that's like kilometers. So that's the same as, the rest of the world and NASA, as opposed to Americans, they're still on the miles. I guess the UK still uses miles, like for some stuff. I'm not 100% sure, but everybody else is converted to metric. Another one would be Z. So saying instead of Z, Americans say Z, but Canadians say Z. There's also we use like British and French kind of spellings for some words, right? Like color, COLOUR, or center, CENTRE, or check, CHEQUE, instead of CHECK down in the States. I'd also say another one is KD. So if you mention KD, that's Kraft Dinner, like the pasta in orange flaky cheese sauce, like carb loading. That's what it's for. I'd also say another difference is we use universities as opposed to colleges in the States. So we've got, University of Winnipeg, University of Waterloo, Whereas in the States, like the top level education would be like Ivy League colleges, right? So we've got universities and they've got colleges down in the States, whereas colleges in Canada mainly refers to like community college, which is more like vocational work or like hands-on training for technical skills is usually what colleges are for in Canada. Yeah, I'd also say one other thing I've noticed is Mounties. So Mounties are, they do ride horses and they've got the red serge, like the hat and everything like that. But imagine them as like, kind of like the FBI, like they're in the federal level. They also do like local policing in small communities where there just isn't enough people to have justify a full-on police force. So I have like Mounties or RCMP, Royal Mounted Canadian Police, that will go into and police communities and have people that travel between them and check the highways and give people tickets while they're going to the other small communities. They're not like a local police force, just because there just isn't enough, in a small town or village, there just isn't enough people to warrant having multiple people hired in and policing a small community, right?
So much for watching. Thank you for over 3,000 subscribers. That's genuinely insane. If
Yeah,
you're
I
Canadian
don't-
watching this, please.
I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm just using this to like help. I figured I could give you a hand, Tyler. You wouldn't mind hearing another perspective on your reaction here.
leave your favorite slang.
Oh, maybe I'll have to check that out. This was by Adventures and Naps. Did she say that she had 3,000 subscribers? Like, thanks for 3,000? She has 134 now. So that turned out pretty good. This was by Adventures.
I'd also say another term for Canadians probably would be like riding. So that would be if you're snowboarding, you'd say you're going riding, unless you're a horse person, and then you're like horse riding. But yeah, if you say you're going riding, that would definitely mean you're going snowboarding.
And Naps. This was 4 years ago. I gotta give that a like. That was a very good video. Very
Okay.
fun.
Make sure I
As
give
a
you a like.
Canadian, I thought all these terms were universal. I could see where you'd make that mistake. Canadians say sorry. Yeah, that's another
They
one.
do.
Sorry. I don't
Apologies.
think she mentioned sorry.
Yeah, I say sorry
I'm
all the
Canadian.
time.
It's so weird to see
It's
all the
easy-
slang
hey, you're
I
not trying to
use
be
every day and
confrontational.
don't realize it.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, the reason, saying sorry, you're just trying to be like, you're going with the flow. You're not admitting to anything. You're not actually apologizing. You're just saying sorry. You're trying to like get out of people's road. Like, oh, sorry, I'm like getting out of the road.
So a lot of people saying that these are very accurate.
Yeah, for the most part.
Anything else? You forgot. I'm just gonna squeeze past you.
This is
Every
true.
Canadian in every
Yeah.
grocery store
Yeah.
ever. Okay.
I'm just gonna squeeze past you here.
Okay. This was good. This was fun. There were plenty of stuff in this that I had never heard of, not aware of. I thought I was really getting a grip on how Canadians speak, the phrases,
You're getting there, Tyler.
slang terms.
You're slowly becoming an official Canadian here. You're learning all the details. You're checking. You're at least interested, which is what most Americans probably wouldn't be delving. Most Americans definitely do not delve this deep into Canadian culture. That's for sure. So hey man, thanks. That's awesome.
The differences between the U.S. and Canadian speech, but there's still quite a few that I was not aware of. Most were quite amusing, quite fun. I enjoy these. Nothing in here was like vulgar and horrible or anything like a lot of the terms that the young U.S. kids are using these days. But this was very wholesome, very nice stuff. If you thought this video was wholesome and nice as well, feel free to give it a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting
Sure, man. Keep 'em
to
coming.
Canada,
Anyway, thank you very
Canadian
much.
culture, things in Canada I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching.